misguidance and erroneous assumptions. The Anunnaki beings were a pure imagination of the Earth humans, who, full of fantasy and according to their beliefs, fabricated the Anunnaki people from the planet Nibiru, as the giant shape in the sky appeared, which truly did not deal with an actual planet, rather it concerned an uncommonly big comet, which actually does have an orbital period around the solar system of around 3,600 years. That therefore only entered as myth into the imagination of the ancient Earth humans. Indeed, it truly never existed, because the comet is not in a position to bear human life. It must be said in addition to that the designation Phaeton is completely wrongly used, because Phaeton was the planet which was destroyed by its inhabitants, namely Malona, which shattered into thousands of pieces and today forms the asteroid belt. Regarding the planet Malona, respectively, Phaeton, it is also wrongly asserted that that was the planet from which the Earth and its moon arose. Shamat, namely, is a designation born of an old Earth language, for the planet Phaeton, respectively Malona, which was destroyed through human irrationality. Now the only thing still to say is that a big planet, with great speed on the other side of the Sun, orbits the star and can therefore never be seen from the Earth. It deals thereby with an uninhabited planet which we have given the name, Kathein, which, however, will drift out of the solar system in the time to come. But that does not concern the aforementioned comet. And apart from that, there are yet two different belts on the other side of the orbit of Pluto, in which comets and wandering planets move, a great number of which penetrate into the inner solar system at regular, periodic, albeit sporadic intervals. Thereby diverse ones of these can also sporadically endanger the solar planets, which, again and again, at greater intervals in time, also leads to comets actually impacting with planets. Billy says, can you please explain somewhat more about that? Quetzel says the first belt, a zone, is located up to more than 150,000 astronomical units from the Sun. An astronomical unit thereby corresponds to the mean distance from the Sun to the Earth, thus 149,597,870 kilometers. At an earlier time, when the Giza pyramids were built, this distance however still amounted to 152,500,000 kilometers, a number which is also of enormous significance in regard to the calculation of the entire universe as 280 elements. 150,000 astronomical units corresponds to around 4,000 times the distance from the Sun to the planet Pluto, which is essentially the last of the planets in the solar system known to the humans. All other objects outside the orbit of Pluto already belong to the zone of the first belt. Billy says, excuse me, but then what is it with the 10th planet, that is supposedly zooming around out there? You have always spoken of such a 10th, and further planets. Quetzel says in addition to the smaller planets far outside the orbit of Pluto, it deals thereby with the Earth-sized planet, Kathein, which, with very great speed and at a great distance, follows its orbit around the Sun, however, in the coming years drifting away more and more, and disappearing into space. Its period of orbit around the Sun is so big that, seen from the Earth, it remains constantly hidden behind the Sun. But listen further, located in the aforementioned first zone of the first belt far outside the orbit of Pluto are, according to estimations, 1,300,000,000, smallest, small, medium-sized, large and largest objects, of which, again according to estimations, some 130 billion cometary nuclei must be taken into consideration. But furthermore there is yet a second zone, respectively, a second belt, still very much further outside of the first belt, which, like the first, draws itself in a ring shape around the solar system. Innumerable objects of all sizes are also in this belt, and so it speaks for itself that there are also very numerous cometary nuclei. As in the first, there are also very large objects in the second, which are as large as the Earth or even bigger. as a consequence of the great distance from the Sun and the absence of light from the objects in dark space. Even with good telescopes they can hardly be seen from the Earth, or cannot be seen at all. With the two belts, which can also be designated as rings, this deals with the remnants of the gigantic primordial cloud of gas, particles and objects, and so forth, from which the solar system, with all its planets, ultimately formed more than 5,500,000,000 years ago. But the cloud's primordial matter did not form at the aforementioned time, rather it already formed more than 46 billion years ago, and then, in the course of time, condensed into its final form, and supplied a substance for the solar system more than 5,500,000,000 years ago. Here and there objects drift away from the two aforementioned belts, as do cometary nuclei, which penetrate into the inner solar system. In other words, if a fixed star occasionally reaches a certain astronomical proximity, then its effect is that single cometary nuclei, from the many billion smallest, small, middle-sized, large and largest objects, loosen out of the bands of the two zones and occupy a course in the inner solar system. Many of the comets, such as the one we have spoken of as Nibiru, move back again to their outermost regions of origin outside the inner solar system after their approach to the Sun and its planets, also the Earth, or they take an inner system course, so they therefore stay in the direct solar system as the system's own comets, and they constantly, recurrently, follow their courses. Many, which return to the outermost two belt zones, remain there for a very long time before they come back. So the duration of the stay in the belts can be centuries, millennia, many millennia, or even hundreds of millions of years before they return on their course again in the inner solar system, if they were, or are, forced into a recurrent course by the Sun and its planets. Others, on the other hand, become torn from their course by planets, by their moons, or by the Sun, and, bursting asunder, impact with them. Billy says thank you for your explanations. Translators note this concludes Dyson's and Vivian's translated portion. The following was translated by Benjamin Stevens. But in addition, I would still like to say something, if you permit. Quetzel says just speak. You probably also know something about the comets, I suppose. Billy says yes. But please correct me if I say something wrong. So comets are discovered practically every year. However, most of these are only visible with binoculars or telescopes, but not to the naked eye. Comets are also known as feather stars or tail stars, and occasionally, such appear in the sky, which offer a truly fantastic spectacle and which can even be observed over longer periods of time in the sky. Since ancient times, tail stars were regarded as spectacular and sensational celestial phenomena, and their sight alone in the day or night sky would cause a tremendous sensation and would often release panic-stricken anxiety. Looking at the comets from antiquity, it becomes clear that these were not yet regarded as celestial bodies because these tail-moving phenomena were attributed to the atmosphere, and to be sure, as similar phenomena comparable to lightning and clouds, thunder and rain, as well as hail and snow. If one studies the Almagest, a corruption of the translation of the Arabic title Al-Majesty, the most famous Greek astronomical manual of Ptolemy, one will not find a single occurrence of comets therein. Then, in the time when cometary phenomena in the sky won a special meaning for human beings, tail stars were held responsible for all events on Earth. The erroneous belief prevailed before, and this is even apparent today and will continue to be in the future with the crazy, false astrologers and other lunatics and delusional believers that comets would be responsible for the fate of individual humans as well as for the fate of entire peoples and the Earth itself as well as for the climate and natural disasters, etc. in general. Comets were, as they still are today among those who are confused, regarded as great and malignant bringers of misfortune. Thus, the great, luminous and menacing-looking tails of the feather stars aroused anxiety and terror. In a delusion-believing manner, it was accepted by the people who had strongly fallen to the God-delusional belief that comets were breathing rods of God, which were assigned to the world and the people under the moon. Only with the spectacular comet of 1577, which was even to be seen in full